What's up everybody and welcome to another edition of AGR's Pop Culture Reviews. You know, I think one of the best decades for gaming was definitely the end of the 90s, mostly because we saw some really great titles come out, especially on the PlayStation, but more importantly, it gave rise to a number of different genres, more specifically, the Resident Evil survival horror genre, which was awesome. Now, with the release of Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, we have to kind of look back at what made the series really great, and thankfully Capcom finally had a moment of lucidity and went back to its true survival horror roots. Now, of course, you're always going to have Resident Evil purists who were a little bit disappointed that some of the original characters didn't make an appearance in the new Resident Evil game, but that's a minor gripe, and thankfully, at least, Resident Evil is now going in the right direction. Now, of course, I know that Resident Evil 6 was panned mostly because it really strayed away from survival horror and was more action-oriented, and I get that, but nevertheless, it wasn't a bad game and I had a lot of fun with it. So today we're going to be taking a look at the Hot Toys 1/6 scale version of Leon S. Kennedy from Resident Evil 6. Now, if you guys recall, I did my Resident Evil 6 Ada Wong figure last month, and I really love that figure. And you know what, to be honest with you, Resident Evil 2 was my most favorite game in the entire franchise, mostly because we're introduced to Leon and to Ada Wong for the first time. And I have to admit, the story was really good, especially when we think we lose Ada Wong. The original Resident Evil game was a classic, and I love the atmosphere of the mansion, but what made Resident Evil 2 even more impressive was the fact that you were running around Raccoon City infested with zombies. Say what you will about Resident Evil 6, but you have to admit that the character models were amazing, especially Leon Kennedy. Now, what I like about this figure is that it looks like it came right out of the game. Check out the head sculpt there, incredibly detailed. I like that little piece that he has over his ear, which is something that you see in the game, and especially the sculpt of the hair, which sounds really funny to say, but overall, it looks fantastic. You know, one of the things that I do have to remark about this figure is that, relatively speaking, it's not as expensive as other Hot Toys. But you wouldn't know it by the materials used here. Take a look at the leather jacket and especially the purple undershirt, and he even has a red undershirt underneath that one. The attention to detail is fantastic, the craftsmanship looks great, especially in the stitching, and it looks like actual leather. I've remarked on this before, but these Hot Toys figures, they look like they have their own little tiny wardrobe just for these figures. Guys, don't freak out, okay? This is not the actual color of the pants. This is just an unfortunate effect from the lighting and the camera. They're not purple. They're actually a deep brown of khaki, and they look fantastic. Unfortunately, they don't show up in the camera, but regardless of the fact, and you'll see if you get the figure, this is an excellent pair of trousers. The detail here is fantastic, just like the jacket and the shirt. You know, this is going to sound really silly, and I know that I mentioned this enough so that people think that I have some kind of foot fetish. That's not it at all. I have to admit that the boots or shoes on this figure are done really well, and despite the fact that the color looks a little bit off because of the trousers, the color here, especially for the shoes, look really great and complement that khaki, yes, it is khaki, very well. Overall, I'm very impressed with what they did with the shoes here. So if you're going to be fighting off hordes of zombies, you're going to need guns. Lots of guns. And fortunately, this is one of several weapons that this figure comes with. And let me tell you something, Leon's packing some heat. The detail here is fantastic. I love the gunmetal finish and the stock, and if you'll notice, there's even a laser light attachment. It looks great. The only drawback I saw to the pistols is that they're not functional, so you can't move the slide or anything. I just thought that this rifle looked really cool and I wanted to display it with the figure. I definitely love the color palette here. Those greens and black really make the rifle pop out, and it really stands out against the rest of the figure. Now, the only real drawback here is that there's not enough dry brushing here, so it doesn't really look metallic, but whatever, it's what we get. The stock is adjustable though, and I thought that was pretty cool, and I don't understand why they didn't do that with the handguns. But whatever, it's still a great looking rifle. And again, if you're really good at the dry brush technique, you can really customize this however you like it. Just like with all Hot Toys figures, you get the crotch grabber and the stand. Now, the only thing that I have to complain about this, because it is a good stand, it's very simple. It does read Resident Evil 6 and the name of the figure, Leon Kennedy. But like I said, the one drawback is that you see the sign where it says Leon Kennedy? If you look at it at a certain angle, it eclipses the Resident Evil 6 logo, and I think that was a bit of a misstep. I'm not sure why they did that, but you can barely see it. As I mentioned before, this figure comes with a lot of weapons, and this is an additional pair of pistols that you get with this figure. Now, they're incredibly detailed, but again, just like the previous pistol, it can benefit from a little bit more of a dry brush technique to give it a little more realism, but overall they're pretty cool. Leon's shotgun does fare a little bit better in overall detail and realism, and one of the cool things about it is that it does come with a dot sight, and the pump action actually works, so it is functional. Overall, it's pretty freaking cool, and you know what, now that I think about it, I think I would have much rather have displayed the shotgun with this figure than the rifle. Now, by far the most impressive accessory about this figure is definitely the RPG. I mean, take a look at the colors there. That brown, that olive green, and it's offset with that black. It just looks fantastic, and the great thing about it is that the rocket is actually functional, meaning that you can take it out of the actual chamber of the RPG, which is pretty cool. And finally, rounding out the last bit of accessories is 4 additional hands, which will help you out with various poses, and some of them are very specific depending on what weapon you're going to use, so that's pretty cool as well, because it actually holds every single weapon very well. Overall, guys, this is another very solid piece by Hot Toys, and I definitely love what they're doing with the Resident Evil line, and I'm curious to see what other characters they're going to come out with. You know, the possibilities are pretty exciting. I can't wait. Now, before I go, I just gotta thank the folks over at Big Bad Toy Store for sending this wonderful piece over for review. Alright guys, so that's my official review on the Hot Toys 1/6 scale version of Leon S. Kennedy from Resident Evil 6. As always, I thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next AGR's Pop Culture Reviews.